Shayne Coplan is the founder and CEO of Polymarket, a new kind of platform where prediction meets participation. He's turning public opinion into tradable insights, blurring the line between data, markets, and transparency. Coplan stands for the next generation of entrepreneurs, reshaping how information moves and what investors do with it.
This is our final session of the day. Shayne, thank you very much for being here and in a much more colorful shirt than I have, so I appreciate that as well.
Thank you for having me.
Talk to me a little bit about the genesis of Polymarket. The tale, Lisa, is that you were kind of sitting in your apartment during COVID and you had an interest in prediction markets and you kind of developed it. Is that accurate? How does this start?
That's the story, yeah. I'd read, when I look back at like old documents or old emails, I was already very passionate about prediction markets, information markets, decision markets, futarchy. I'd read all these academic papers about it. I'd emailed the authors. I'd used the predecessors, the existing products. Whenever I'd use them, I'd be like, well, this isn't right, but this is wrong. This is so cool, but I can't even make sense of it because the product obfuscates it, et cetera. And at the onset of the pandemic, I had dropped out. I was 21. I dropped out when I was 18. I didn't have shit to show for it. I was running out of money. I was on the Lower East Side. And I was like, man, if we had information markets on when the pandemic, how the pandemic would play out, or when the vaccine would be ready, or when shelter in place in New York would be over, it would be the perfect use case of these market mechanisms. And I was on X the whole time, Twitter, and it was just this like endless supply of misinformation and pontification and different people claiming different opinions, and it was just impossible to distill the signal from the noise. So I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna go build this. It's difficult, no one's done it, there's risks, but I have a vision for how I can do it better, and went.
The thesis of the difference between pontification and prediction is kind of the wisdom of the crowds, right? What gives you confidence that the crowd is right?
So to distill down what a polymarket is, there's a yes and no share for every question. You ask a question, you have yes shares and no shares. If you're buying a yes share, you're basically being matched with someone buying a no share, or someone who has a yes share who's selling it. But even that it's economically similar. So the way it works is you have these yes shares for these events, and you get $1 per share if you're right. And just like a stock gets traded and the stock goes up if it's performing well and based on sentiment, also based on fundamentals, this is an asset that is worth $1 if something specific happens. So the net present value of that asset is equal to the likelihood of it happening. Unless it's a very far time frame, then it gets more complicated because of the time value of money. But let's just say it's something that's happening in a week. Whatever the market is pricing that asset as, it's basically saying this is the likelihood of this event occurring, because you get $1 if it occurs, and if it's trading at 20 cents, people think it's 20% likely to happen. And the term wisdom of the crowds gets thrown around a lot. But really what it is it's price formation. It's this idea that you have people saying, oh, well, I'll buy at this price, but if it goes too high, I'm not going to buy there. And some people say, oh, well, I'll sell at this price. And someone says, well, I'll sell it to you even for a better price.
So it's about conviction, is basically what
you're saying. Yeah, I mean, it's price discovery applied to an asset that is mapped to the likelihood of something. So you look at an order book, and where supply meets demand at any given moment, whatever the market price is, that's the percentage likelihood. And that's kind of complicated. Not everyone can understand it. But when you distill it down to here's the percentage likelihood for this happening, and here's how it trends over time, it becomes very digestible and very useful for people. And I think that's why we've seen something that's pretty niche and pretty complicated take off on the scale that it has, is because when it's distilled down from a consumer perspective, it's really informative.
How does Polymarket make money, or does it currently make money?
We don't make money. Yeah, we lose money. I mean, look, our goal is, when you build something on a blockchain, there were the way that we built it initially, which is still built on a blockchain, there were sort of different norms of how to do it. And we're entering the US, and I would expect it to be different. And it's not like we don't like money. It's that when you're creating a new market, you want to try to grow the market as big as possible and have as much market share. So from our point of view, the idea that when you look at any Polymarket, you look at the order book, there is a spread. The same way that on Robinhood, there's no fees, but there's a spread because there's payment for order flow, and that on a sports book, you're not paying a fee, but the price that you're seeing bakes in a spread. So there is a spread on Polymarket. It's just that the spread is being pocketed by people who are providing
by the people on it. So, I mean, what you're saying is you're talking about building market share. The easiest way to obviously build market share is to offer something for very little money, right? You know, everyone would go to McDonald's instead of Burger King if McDonald's decided we're giving away all of our hamburgers. At some point, it sounded like you were saying that when you guys are formally back in the US, which I think is shortly, that it may change. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, eventually we're going to take a cut of trading.
Speaking of coming back into the US, when is that happening shortly, and when is that happening?
Yeah, the exchange is live. Like the time from us acquiring QCX.
Sorry, and for those who don't know, you guys recently acquired a regulated exchange, and thus that lets you come back into the US.
Yeah, a few months ago, and it's been all hands on deck to get that operational and get to market. We've been beta testing it. We've had people at the office coming and beta testing it. It's been a lot of fun. There's, just like it's like going back to the basics. You're building a new product. Obviously, we've learned a lot from building Polymarket as it is today, international DeFi. And the goal for Polymarket in the US is it's starting mobile first, and it's meant to be Polymarket in your pocket, as distilled down and simple as possible. Excuse me. So yeah, the exchange is live. If you go and look at the filings from the clearinghouse, you'll see, okay, there's volume.
There is a Polymarket that says, I think it was when I looked last night, 85% chance that it launches in 2025.
Yeah.
Is that a good? Should someone click yes on that?
Well, I think that it says public, so I think that's probably the delta between the fact that there's like the exchange is operational and there's money flowing through it. No comment on the right position to take on that.
You've talked a little bit about launching a Polymarket token, and other people at the company have talked about this. Does the U.S. launch?
They were not supposed to do that.
But they did do that.
Yeah.
So they said it's coming, but they suggest is it accurate to say U.S. launch comes before a token?
Most definitely. Look, to clear up the air on the token stuff, it's like all options are on the table for Polymarket at any given moment, right? It's been 5.5 years.
I believe they actually had a name for it in the statements they made. It was beyond just development. Like, I think they had a name for the token.
I think it was just one of our guys saying that. And like, yeah, it's as with a lot of projects, any project that's building on a blockchain, you have to weigh the options. We've grown a lot. If we grow a lot in the U.S., there's an alternative path of going public, and we did.
What is the value? As you said, you guys launched on the blockchain. That's kind of been one of the differentiators between Polymarket and some of your competitors. What's important about that? And obviously it's the way you build. Could you ever foresee changing that?
Yeah. So to take a step back as to like the promise of blockchains and why the idea of building on blockchains is integral to the story of Polymarket. When I started Polymarket, I really did not have money. I really was stressed about money and running out of money. And I was very passionate about this idea. I felt like I was the one guy who could blend the product design that was necessary to make something like this more mass market, or even somewhat digestible versus like the very technical, intricate academic approach to building the product. Like, because the underpinnings of Polymarket are so complicated, and they're so deeply rooted in academia and like the rationalist community, and the people who do that rarely know how to build mass market products. So I was a nerd about both, and I was like, I think I can figure this out, or at least it's worth a shot, and the timing is right. And I just wouldn't have been able to do that if I had to go and retain lawyers and figure all these things out. It's like,
you have the money to do all that now, so
yeah.
Could you foresee changing that?
Yeah, so look, ultimately, there would be no prediction markets if I didn't go, as you said today, if I wasn't like, hey, I'm going to go experiment with this and build a new user experience and figure it out. So the idea of experimentation is amazing, allows for innovation. There's myriad benefits to tokenization in particular. Things are naturally 24/7, trading 24/7. There's global liquidity. There's transparency. You see who's trading what. People talk about, oh, asymmetric information, you're able to go and see the provenance of every market and each wallet and what they hold, and you're able to go and much more easily defend and sort of identify where there are trades that likely divulge more information than a typical trade to the market. So if like someone makes a new account and they make a trade versus someone who's traded all the time. And what I'm very excited about is the ability to go and turn tokens into Lego blocks, basically, and go and say, well, I have an outcome for this Polymarket, and I can bundle that with an asset, and then that can be a structured product. Or you can go and use the outcome token of a Polymarket as collateral and borrow against it. I think that it's not by chance that you hear so much hullabaloo about like the largest consumer fintechs, like Robinhood and Coinbase, moving extremely aggressively into tokenization and sort of betting their future on that, as well as all this talk about stablecoins. There's a lot of reasons why finance would turn to being built on a blockchain and being global and united, as opposed to all these silos where there's these companies that gatekeep everything and it's hard to move money. So there's tons of benefits. I think that ultimately we are a prediction market company. We're Polymarket. And at least as it stands right now in the US, it's difficult, if not impossible, to go and build like a regulated US exchange built on open, decentralized architecture. That may change. We're going to be really focused on that.
Can I ask, you talk about the transparency of being on blockchain. You're right. That also led, there was, as you know, a couple Columbia professors recently came out with a report suggesting that a bunch of, that your bet numbers were inflated because of wash trading. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you want to respond to that? Are they right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's funny. A lot of people who are, look, like, those things get pitched by competitors to journalists. That's what happens.
Yeah, but that's not. But that's not.
Well,
what
I know. So
Columbia started.
I'll address it. If anyone read the article, like these are very small numbers they're talking about. They're throwing around 14% and 5% and then a high recently of 20%. These numbers that they're throwing around, and it's like part of building on a blockchain is that you can actually go and look and audit every single trade, every single wallet, every single account. And I think that's part of the transparency is that people can go and look at everything and they can discern trends from different people trading, and they can go and look at people running all different types of strategies. And obviously, when you build on a blockchain and people assume there will be a token, et cetera, some people try to be nefarious. As it mentioned, like we crack down a lot on that. And it's an ongoing effort. But I don't think that undermines the credibility of Polymarket's accuracy or its traction whatsoever.
I'm wondering, when I asked, for example, about the, will Polymarket US technically launch in 2025, you see Sundar, the CEO of Google, the other day retweet, it was a Polymarket about when Gemini 3 was going to be released, which was today, funny. By the way. What do you guys do from an integrity standpoint? For example, I mean, maybe like Sundar knew the date it was coming out. He knew that. And he's not alone. There was marketing people, lawyers, a lot of people inside of Google knew that date down to the minute. What do you guys do, if anything, to basically guard against insider trading?
Yeah. So it goes back to this idea of information markets, right? Like you think about when will Gemini 3 launch? Nobody is under the impression that nobody knows the answer, right? Like, of course, there's people who are working on it who know when it's going to come. And I think what's cool about Polymarket is that it creates this financial incentive for people to go and divulge the information to the market, and the market to change, and all of a sudden it's trading at 95 cents, and people are like,
when you say divulge, you mean the people who actually know?
Yeah, or someone tells someone, and then the market responds. And I think, the most important takeaway from markets like that and situations like that, which was like super cool, is these markets are a lot smaller than, say, New York mayoral election or any type of market where there's integrity around the outcome and you can model it and there's data. There's a lot more liquidity in those. There's a lot more volume. And these long tail where someone probably knows the answer, people are providing much thinner liquidity. It's wider spreads, and nobody is confused when participating in the market that like, hey, yeah, like at some point in time, someone may come in here.
But I'm curious, does it change when you guys come to the US and you're regulated? Are there different rules about how you have to? I'm thinking, okay, because you guys are in sports now, and I can bet on outcomes of games. Not in the same way as sportsbook. I'm not betting necessarily odds against the house, but right now, whether it be DraftKings or FanDuel, they have these giant integrity units that know that, okay, that guy is shooting the free throw, but they also know their cousins and their relatives and their neighbors and are making sure, or at least supposedly, are making sure they're not betting, or if they are, they're paying attention. Do you guys know the same sort of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we've got some stuff in the works that I think will be a great improvement on what's existing. Look, integrity around the game, around the markets is critically important. There are certain regulatory reporting requirements that you have to abide by that these fall under. It's very generic in general, but like this falls squarely under it, and we're going to abide by that. But in general, the fact that these markets are picking up a lot of steam, it's important for the people innovating in it to also be cognizant of even self-regulating or going and innovating in regulation, then collaborating with the government, with regulators to go and bring it to market.
If sports betting is illegal in a state like California, DraftKings, for example, you can't open, the app won't work in a state like California, you can't bet there. What is the argument for why Polymarket, betting on the same game, should be legal there?
Yeah, so look, the question is why.
I mean, there's an argument that you found a loophole.
Yeah, look, the way that it currently works is there's a duopoly instituted for sports betting in America, upheld by, like there's this patchwork state-based solution where every single state is like some sort of weird backdoor lobbying of the tribes get this and the tax is this rate and everything. It's like this hodgepodge solution. And as a result, it's so goddamn complicated and expensive that no new entrants can enter the market. So as a result, you have
a couple have Fanatics has tried,
and
MGM
they've got
has tried.
Well, Fanatics and MGM are kind of the two, and both of them have not gotten a lot of yeah. So those are the only two challengers I'm saying. And if you look at all four of those products, they're all identical. None of them innovate. They all rip off the consumer respectfully. Not that they're not fun on game day, but. So I think that the important thing is like, if you are participating in a market on the outcome of a sports game, that's a financial market. That is what it is. And the idea that the way they should be regulated in America, capitalism, innovation, competition, is that the only way to do it legally is if when you use the app, you can only trade against the house. They can go and ban you if you make money. They can kick you off, and that they can profile you as a user and change the prices based on you. Like, that's a scam. In traditional finance, that's like a bucket shop. That's like a scam. Those are illegal.
So you're arguing the only thing that's legal is the only thing that's not, or are you arguing that's why it's illegal in certain states?
No, I'm saying that that's the way it works right now. You can't expect to run a business that is that rigged against the consumer in perpetuity in America. America is the land of people competing and people innovating and people delivering to customers.
But they're not allowed to operate in those states. I guess that's my question.
Yeah.
Why should Polymarket be able to offer sports betting in a state where books can't?
Yeah. Look, the bottom line is that just like the state solution right now, like these things are made as a result of consumer demand and companies that are innovating that have resources to go and sculpt new frameworks. And it's very early right now in the States for prediction markets. I think that the Polymarket, for there being a lot of reform and sort of alignment and collaboration between regulators and some pushback and sort of seeing where things find equilibrium is like 100%, right? So
you expect the sports betting thing ultimately went to the Supreme Court, who ultimately decided and struck down the national ban. Do you feel that at some point there's going to be a Supreme Court case that involves prediction markets?
I think at some point. What I'll say is like there is an element where if you're listing derivatives in America, you're regulated by the CFTC, there's something called impartial access. And the way that it's supposed to work is when you have a derivative, anyone in America should be able to have access to it. You're distorting the price, you're going and limiting people's participation if you're going and saying, well, you can, but you can't. And the question is, are these legal derivatives? And if they are, then they're regulated like derivatives.
There's been this argument, I think you've made this, and tell me I'm wrong about this, and that because you guys people aren't betting against the house, as you would be on DraftKings or whatever else, that it's not necessarily gambling. I guess my question is it that what you guys are doing, because you've built this market, is it that it is not gambling because it's a market, or is it markets are gambling, we just happen to be a market?
Look, I think that it's not some sort of like, oh, let's like think about this in like a philosophical way, and then there are actual regulatory frameworks for this. There is a different regulatory framework for listing derivative contracts than there is for being an OSB, like having a state licensed sports betting app or some other type of gambling app that's basically an entertainment product that's rigged against you. They take the odds, what you see on Polymarket, and they apply a very large vig, and they sort of obfuscate that you're getting ripped off. And what I'm focused on is like we are a prediction market company. We bought a derivatives exchange and a derivatives clearinghouse. That's what we're going to market with that. That is the infrastructure. And we're focused on being compliant within that framework.
Shayne, final question for you. What is your favorite Polymarket, new Polymarket that you've seen out on the last few days or weeks?
Yeah, I mean, for me, again and again, I love OSINT, open source intelligence. I love going on X and going down these rabbit holes and seeing people who are using all these alternative information sources to go make sense of what's happening, for example, in the Middle East. And what's happened is now, with Polymarket, with some of these geopolitical markets, there's this incentive for people who do that out of passion, and I would have to go and go to their Buy Me a Coffee link and donate to them, to go and have not only an incentive to be more accurate and find more information, but also they can go make money for their hobby and their habit and what they love doing. And as a result, what you've seen, people who are in the Middle East, they oftentimes have heard in the WhatsApps and the group chats, it's like people are getting their information from Polymarket because it moves even quicker than the Telegram groups and the OSINT channels. And it's also obviously easier to verify. And that moves even quicker than the news. So the idea that people can have those tabs open and just go and get a much more accurate insight into something that may actually really be important for their safety or their family or their livelihood or how the next week of their life is going to go is just an awesome use case. There was this thing called the policy analysis markets that DARPA had funded that never really came to life that effectively forecasted the promise of this idea that you could use prediction markets, in that case combinatorial markets, to go and get a peer into the future of what was likely to happen and make better decisions. And to see that coming to life, albeit very early, is the coolest thing to me. I still can't get over it. It's like my perfect nerd paradise.
Shayne, thank you very much. And with that, that is a wrap on our fourth Axios BFD. Very quickly, I want to thank everybody, obviously, on the Axios crew who put this together. Second, everybody here at the venue, our sponsors, Bayer and CS and Center for Accounting. That's basically it. Oh, there's some things. I'm told there are going to be some things that pop up on screen. These are our next things. We will be back in New York for Giving Tuesday. We will be in Davos. If you are in Davos, I will be in San Francisco for AIDC. Check axios.com/events. Please, drinks, eat. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you, everyone.